Jake was sitting inside a dealership, looking at a brand new SUV with a price tag of nearly $45,000. The salesperson wasn't talking about the $45,000. He was talking about the monthly payment. After a trade-in and a long financing term, the number sounded surprisingly comfortable. Jake could afford it. His income had grown, his credit was good, and nobody would have questioned the purchase. But before signing anything, he opened an investment calculator on his phone and entered the same $45,000. Then he imagined leaving that money invested for 20 years instead of putting it in his driveway. The result made him pause. Suddenly, he wasn't choosing between a used car and a new SUV. He was choosing between something that would lose value over time and an asset that could potentially grow. But there was another side to the story. Jake needed reliable transportation. The cheapest possible car wasn't necessarily the smartest choice either. So he decided to do something most car buyers never do. Instead of asking, "Can I afford the monthly payment?" he asked, "What will this car really cost me? And what could this money become if I invested it instead?" Level 1. The $8,000 car transportation comes first. Jake's first question wasn't about investing. It was much simpler. Did he actually need a car? His work required him to travel between different locations, public transportation was unreliable, and rideshare costs were quickly adding up. A vehicle wasn't a luxury anymore. It was part of his ability to earn an income. But that didn't mean he needed a brand new SUV. After searching for several weeks, Jake found a reliable used sedan for around $8,000. It had some scratches. The interior wasn't impressive, and nobody would turn around to admire it in a parking lot. But it started every morning, had reasonable mileage, and got him where he needed to go. Jake used part of his savings to buy it and avoided taking on a large monthly payment. More importantly, he didn't drain every dollar he had. He kept an emergency reserve and continued putting money into investments every month. The car solved his transportation problem without becoming the center of his financial life. Jake began to understand an important distinction. A car can be necessary without being expensive. He didn't need to turn transportation into a status symbol. He needed something reliable enough to protect his income and practical enough to leave room for his other financial goals. Every month that passed without a large car payment gave Jake additional money to save and invest. He could see how easily the decision could have gone the other way. A $35,000 or $45,000 vehicle would have given him more comfort and technology, but it also would have created a payment that followed him for years. Instead, Jake chose to let his transportation serve his life rather than letting his life serve his car payment. Level 2. The $25,000 upgrade. More car means more opportunity cost. Several years later, Jake's old sedan started becoming expensive to maintain. One repair was followed by another, and eventually he began spending more time at the mechanic than he wanted. This time, he decided it was reasonable to upgrade. He started looking at vehicles around $25,000. Unlike his first purchase, Jake could comfortably afford the payment. His income had increased, his savings were healthier, and he had built an investment portfolio. But before buying, he asked a question that most people don't ask when they walk into a dealership. What else could this $25,000 do? Jake opened his investment account and imagined leaving $25,000 invested for decades. He understood that investment returns aren't guaranteed and markets can fall. But he also understood the concept of opportunity cost. Money placed into a car couldn't simultaneously be invested in stocks, bonds, retirement accounts, or a business. And unlike an investment, the vehicle would generally lose value as it aged. Jake eventually chose a dependable vehicle that cost less than the maximum he could afford. He didn't buy the cheapest car on the lot, and he didn't feel guilty about spending money on transportation. He simply refused to confuse affordability with value. The lesson stayed with him. When you spend money on a car, you're not only paying the purchase price, you're also giving up the future growth that money might have created somewhere else. Level 3. The new car temptation. Your salary can make expensive cars feel cheap. Jake's income eventually reached a level where a $45,000 vehicle no longer looked outrageous. This was where the real temptation began. The dealership had exactly what he wanted: a modern SUV with advanced safety features, a large touchscreen, comfortable seats, and a long list of upgrades. The salesperson asked how much Jake wanted his monthly payment to be. That question immediately caught his attention. Jake realized how easy it was to make an expensive purchase feel affordable simply by stretching the financing over more years. A $45,000 vehicle didn't feel like $45,000 anymore. It felt like a manageable monthly number. But Jake refused to stop there. He calculated the total loan payments, interest, insurance, fuel, maintenance, registration, taxes, and depreciation. Then he compared that with continuing to drive his current vehicle and investing the difference. The comparison wasn't about whether the stock market would definitely outperform the car. Nobody knows exactly what future returns will be. It was about understanding what each choice could potentially create. Jake realized that the danger wasn't necessarily buying a new car. The danger was allowing the monthly payment to hide the real price. A vehicle that fits comfortably into your monthly budget can still be a poor long-term financial decision if it prevents you from building emergency savings, paying off high-interest debt, or investing for retirement. Jake eventually walked out of the dealership without buying the SUV. It wasn't because he couldn't afford it. It was because he realized he didn't want to spend future wealth simply to upgrade his present. Level 4. The luxury car. Are you buying transportation or identity? Jake's friend eventually bought a luxury vehicle that cost more than Jake's first home. When they met for dinner, the car immediately attracted attention. The leather interior was beautiful, the technology was impressive, and the vehicle made a statement before his friend even stepped out. Jake understood the attraction because cars can represent much more than transportation. They can represent success, independence, achievement, and social status. After years of working hard, why shouldn't someone enjoy the rewards? Jake didn't believe luxury cars were automatically bad. If someone has substantial wealth, no problematic debt, and can comfortably afford an expensive vehicle without sacrificing important goals, enjoying a luxury car can be perfectly reasonable. The problem begins when the car becomes evidence of success rather than a purchase made from success. Jake imagined two futures. In one, he bought the luxury vehicle and enjoyed it immediately. In the other, he invested the money and allowed it to compound for decades. The second option wasn't as exciting. There was no new car smell, no admiring looks, and no impressive driveway. But there was something else: potential financial freedom. Jake finally understood that the question wasn't whether luxury was good or bad. It was whether the luxury purchase was consuming money that had a more important job. He didn't want to spend thousands of dollars simply because other people might think he was successful. He wanted his financial decisions to reflect what actually mattered to him. Level 5. The financing trap. A low payment can hide a high price. Jake then began studying how car financing changed people's decisions. He noticed that dealerships rarely started conversations with the total cost. They started with monthly payments. A $60,000 vehicle could suddenly seem reasonable when the conversation became, "Can you handle this payment?" But Jake knew there was a difference between being able to make a payment and being able to afford the financial consequences of the purchase. A longer loan could reduce the monthly payment while increasing the total interest paid. Meanwhile, the vehicle could lose value faster than the loan balance declined. That created another problem: negative equity. If Jake needed to sell or trade the vehicle before the loan was paid off, he could potentially owe more than the vehicle was worth. Jake also realized that the payment wasn't the only recurring expense. Insurance could be higher, fuel could cost more, tires, maintenance, registration, and taxes all added to the true cost of ownership. He started thinking about cars in terms of total cost of ownership instead of the sticker price. This changed the way he evaluated every vehicle. A car with a slightly higher purchase price could potentially be cheaper to own if it was reliable and efficient. A cheap vehicle could become expensive if it constantly required repairs. Jake's goal wasn't to minimize the purchase price at all costs. It was to understand the complete financial picture before making the decision. Level 6. Buying the car and investing. You don't have to choose extremes. Eventually, Jake discovered that the debate didn't have to be completely black and white. He didn't need to drive an ancient car just so he could invest every available dollar. And he didn't need to buy the most expensive vehicle his income allowed. There was a middle ground. Jake could purchase a reliable car at a reasonable price, avoid excessive financing, maintain an emergency fund, and continue investing automatically. Instead of putting every financial resource toward transportation, he gave his money different jobs. Some money paid for the car. Some protected him from emergencies, some went toward retirement, some remained available for future opportunities. This approach made Jake feel much more comfortable because he didn't have to sacrifice his present completely for his future. He also didn't have to sacrifice his future just to enjoy his present. He realized that good personal finance isn't about making every decision as cheap as possible. It's about making sure one decision doesn't destroy your ability to make other important decisions later. A car should help you live your life, get to work, take care of your family, and enjoy your freedom. Investing should help create financial security decades from now. Jake wanted both. The trick was making sure the car didn't consume the money that his future needed. Level 7. The real math. What is the car really costing you? Years later, Jake looked back at every car he had owned and realized the biggest lesson wasn't that everyone should buy used cars or that everyone should invest instead of buying new. The real lesson was understanding the complete cost of every decision. A car has a purchase price, but that's only the beginning. There can be financing costs, depreciation, insurance, fuel, maintenance, registration, taxes, and repairs. But there's also another cost that doesn't appear on the dealership paperwork: opportunity cost. If you spend $45,000 today, you can't invest that same $45,000 at the same time. If you finance a car and pay $700 every month, you can't invest that $700 while it's going toward the loan. But the opposite is also true. If a reliable car helps you reach a higher-paying job, saves hours of commuting, or protects your family's safety, its value isn't simply measured by depreciation. That's why Jake stopped looking for a universal answer. Instead, he asked 3 questions before every major vehicle purchase. Do I need it? Can I comfortably afford the total cost? And what am I giving up by spending this money? Those questions helped him make better decisions without turning money into a constant source of guilt. Jake eventually understood that the real battle wasn't cars versus investing, it was today versus tomorrow. A car gives you something immediately: transportation, convenience, safety, comfort, and sometimes even enjoyment. Investing gives you something different: the possibility of long-term growth, financial security, and greater freedom later. The mistake is pretending that one choice has no cost. Every dollar spent has an opportunity cost, and every dollar invested has a lifestyle cost because you can't spend it today. The goal isn't to eliminate spending, it's to spend intentionally. If a $20,000 car meets your needs, you don't need a $60,000 car just because your income allows it. If a more expensive vehicle genuinely provides value you can comfortably afford, there's nothing automatically wrong with buying it. The important thing is knowing what the purchase is costing you beyond the sticker price.